myself again. But it's the only...
Good evening and welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith. It's Tuesday night, which means it's time for me to be joined by Liam Kennedy from the Shields Gazette. Good evening, Liam.
Hi, Steve. Feels like 2 minutes since we did last week.
I know it's flying round quickly, mate. That's what happens when you get to the back end of the year. I always say once you get past Halloween and bonfire night, when you're a dad, you notice that the year does pass quicker because you're rushing towards Christmas. But first of the month, it's a pinch and a punch, isn't it? On the first of the month. So what have you got for us tonight, mate? You've managed to get the game called off on Friday to create a bit of controversy, as you often do on a Tuesday. But yeah, I mean, joking aside, big news coming out.
Sorry, I was going to tweet you about that today, saying, God, Steve, look, imagine we've done it again. We've created something. People adapt.
It's becoming It is becoming a running joke, mate. But yeah, I mean, it's have you had any updates about what is going on? I think like most people, I've seen the reports, seen Sky News, and very, very little coming out other than we know the game's off because there's people got COVID.
Look, it's a cards close to the chest thing from the club's point of view. They've kind of taken their stance all the way through the process since football returned, really, in Project Restart, that they're very keen for anybody to sort of not mention names, not mention numbers of people. So it's been quite anonymous in that sense. I think everybody got a sense of the three players. I'm not going to name them, but I think everybody could kind of guess the three players that were missing on Friday. The ones that weren't injured were probably the ones who found themselves in the unfortunate situation of testing positive. We've seen staff members, and now this week we're seeing things rack up. We're seeing it going from anywhere between 5 and 10, somewhere in between that, and it could rise even further. We've seen the statement today confirming the news that the game's off on Friday. Quite a powerful defence. Newcastle United definitely put their guard up there, saying, we've stuck since the very start of these really strict COVID-19 protocols set in place by the Premier League, defending their practices throughout this process. And to be fair, the Newcastle United have had a relatively low amount of COVID outbreaks and positives in the time that they've been tested. And this one just seems to be a bit of an anomaly. It just so happens that it's the first one in the Premier League and the first call-off. I mean, there was some talk today. Some people were getting a little bit concerned. I've seen there was some people with legal background tweeting about certain Premier League rules and things like that, and what may or may not happen. This was never really the case. That Newcastle United were going to be sort of had a slap on the wrist for it and 3 points to be given to Aston Villa. It was a little bit of fear mongering a little bit today from some people. That was never the case. I was speaking to the Premier League today. It's very much seen as there was never any hard and fast rule with regards how many players had to be available. The 14 thing was bandied around a lot. But given this was unprecedented, we're in uncharted waters with coronavirus and call-offs of games, given it's the first. It was never really the case that they were going to come down hard on Newcastle. I've seen some people suggesting that, they're not going to do us any favours with regards to the takeover talk and things like that. Again, this isn't something that comes into it. We're talking about the safety and welfare of football players. So the Premier League could not be seen to be taking any kind of dodgy stance with regards to that. We're not just talking about Newcastle United's players here and staff. We're talking about anybody who may be at the ground, any support staff. We're also talking about Aston Villa's staff and their support staff that go along with it, any security, any medical. It's a lot of people we're talking about here, and I think the safety-first approach was to call the game off and allow this to blow over, and that's exactly what's happened. So it's good to see that common sense has prevailed this week, because it would have made no sense at all for Newcastle United to have travelled as well. That's the other thing, travelled halfway down the country on a coach together. We know these COVID tests, sometimes you can test negative before you test positive. There could have been people carrying who didn't test positive, and then it just spreads further and further. The self-isolation for around 10 days is what the protocol is, and that kind of makes sense. So a lot of the people who had it last week will be fine by next weekend, and that'll be the same for people this week. They'll probably be getting towards the end of their isolation period, and a lot of people who test negative will be fine to play next week. So safety first, and it was the right call, in my opinion.
Definitely, yeah. I'm going to open up to the questions, mate, tonight, because there's always lots of questions come in. We very rarely get through them all. We're also going to launch our new campaign. Last month, we obviously did Phone a Friend. Tonight, we are going to launch a new campaign, which is called Think Before You Tweet, which is something very similar. Something we've talked about in great depth over the last few months about trolling on Twitter and social media, etc. And from our perspective, something that means a lot to us, So we will be launching that a little bit later. But let's get to the questions. First off, Peter Robson has a question straight away, and that is: evening, chaps. Question for Liam: is there one exclusive you wish you could break to the world? Not the takeover. What would it be? And is there one you missed out on that you tried to break?
So I'll start the second one first. It's always, I'll explain the process. It's always a really difficult thing. I kind of envy newspaper men of years gone by where they could literally have a story and it would be their story and they could sit on it for days before they actually released it. It's not really the case now. There's so many people involved, so many channels whereby anybody can just put it out there on social media and it grows legs. So there's lots of that. It can be quite an exhilarating experience, quite when you get something that nobody's got, that rush to get it out there. Sometimes you might think if it's late on a night time, you might think, well, I'll wait in the morning because more people will read it. So you have that sort of nervous period. But yeah, I think ultimately, if there was a story that I would love to have had my name against in Newcastle United's medium sort of recent history, it would be imagine being the man who broke something like Kevin Keegan returning to the football club, or imagine Alan Shearer signing for the football club. Those are the type of things that the real moments of history. So something like that. I don't really think there's been anything recently which I've missed out on.
Did you not bring the Joe Linton story, the £40 million man? Did you not break that story?
Well, it certainly was a bit of history, but no, that wasn't me. I can't take the credit for that one. But yeah, there's been plenty. People have seen there's been plenty of transfer exclusives. I would love from now to be the man who all of a sudden came on this show on a Tuesday night, having pulled me strings, having got Steve to pull his strings. So there was a story created on a Tuesday, and we could just come on at 6:00, find out at 5:59, and say, "Look, takeover done." That'd be the one I would love to have my name against.
Never say never. Tom Dixon says, "What's your thoughts on Matty Longstaff linked with the loan move to Derby? Do you think it'll happen?"
I think it's a really good suggestion. I think he's not really getting the game time here. He's a lad who struggled with fitness. He's at a crucial stage in his development. And I think, although I would love to see him in black and white, playing in a Newcastle United shirt, of course, because I rate him. I think he's really good. I've seen him plenty for the 23s. I think he's a fantastic young player. But if he's not going to get in this team, I'd rather see him go somewhere else and get some games, continue his development, go to Derby, go and score goals, put in those dynamic performances from midfield that he can put in, and go and get some experience and come back a better player for it. I'm all for things like that. If the lad's not going to quite get in, and he's going to just sit twiddling his thumbs for 75% of the season waiting for 3 injuries, then I would rather see him go out on loan.
Me too. Yeah, I think it's a good idea. Good suggestion. Colin, good evening. He says, what's the crack with the listed buildings? Are they going to be sold to the Saudis? And not the only person asking that question. Bill Burnett is the same. He's wanting to know, is there anything significant with this?
Yeah, it's been bought by the Qataris. I think they're going to put a big sign up. No, honestly, I don't know. I mean, there's literally been lots of Twitter talk. It's definitely got people interested, but these people are private, and we don't know who they are. Could it be PIF? I would suggest if it was PIF, I'm not necessarily sure it is, but imagine it was, then you would think the deal was virtually done. I don't believe that to be the case. So I think we'll just have to wait and see how this one pans out. But I'd love to be able to sit here and answer. I had lots of questions in the last 24 hours myself on this, and I would love to be able to give you the answer to say, look, it's PIF. They're moving Yasser Al-Ramayan in. He's living next door to St James's Park for a few weeks while he gets the deal sorted. But no, unfortunately, we can't. We can't really speculate on anything. We'll just have to wait and see. But it's certainly a mystery that's got people talking.
B. Taylor says, question for Liam, does the NCSL letter to MPs form any part of their plan for legal action, or should they be viewed as separate actions?
All I would say on that is that everything done by NCSL and others is linked in some kind of way. So it's all for the same cause, no matter what the action may be. And who knows, but I think I would suspect there will be potentially some significant movement before the weekend on the legal front.
Paul William asking if the Villa game is postponed. Yes, it is, mate. No issues now with that. We know it's definitely off. Lots of people talking about joining dots. Have I joined some of the dots with thinking Flat Soul next to St James's has got something to do with the takeover? As you've just heard there from Liam, not 100% sure who's bought them, but it would be nice to think that was the case. And lots of people talking about joining dots, etc. Some people suggesting that it's Alwaleed who's bought the house to move into Newcastle, of course, part of our regular panel with the worldwide squad. Julie Baker points out,
NUFC matters offices, isn't it?
It could be, mate, yeah. Julie Baker says, I've seen Villa's official reply. Very respectful. Every club has their share of idiots to the club for their genuine reply. Yeah, I mean, look, it's nothing we can. There's nothing we can do about this game being postponed. And yeah, well done to Villa for the sensible response. I mean, Twitter might be in a meltdown, but Twitter's a minority of supporters. I keep saying this. It's not the majority of supporters at any club, and you're always going to get some idiots, saying that the game's being called off. But it's got nothing to do with the supporters. Newcastle haven't called it off for any other reason than COVID, and it's very, very serious.
Yeah, it certainly is. I think, like we said earlier, it is common sense. It would have been ridiculous for Newcastle to travel half the length of the country to put a lot more people at risk when they haven't really got control of the outbreak within their own camp. So I think it's the most sensible thing, and it's a good job that everybody's seen it that way. Aston Villa have been respectful, and the Premier League have been more than respectful. It went to their Premier League board today after a request from Newcastle, and like I say, luckily, sensibly, everybody's just going to take a few days isolation and then come back stronger for it, hopefully next week.
Ginger Hoskins says, please look back on Friday. I saw Steve Avenue on the bench hit away, yet he was supposed to be one of the COVID tested positive, and wonder why it spread. Interesting. But yeah, let's look back. We always look back when it's a bad result, Liam, so let's look back when it's a good result. I called it a smash and grab, and my reason behind that was it was a fairly even game. Newcastle against Crystal Palace. The stats backed up what I thought I'd watched. Fairly even. I don't really think anybody deserved to win it. Newcastle smashed and grabbed it in the last couple of minutes and nicked all 3 points, which I was thankful for, delighted for. Yes, it keeps Steve Bruce in the job. I don't think Steve Bruce was going to get sacked anyway, whether he'd lost that game or won the game. I think he'll be there until the takeover goes through. However, got to accentuate the positives. Callum Wilson banging in a goal again. Joe Linton having a decent performance and scoring a fortuitous deflection, but a goal is a goal. But he had a decent game.
Yeah, Joe Linton, we'll start with that. Really, it was a much more positive performance from him. It's no surprise he's been playing in a position where, when he's played in that role, I think he did it against Burnley earlier this season, that when he's played in that role, he's looked okay. Let's not go over the top. It was hardly, an unbelievable performance, but it was much improved by his standards and his levels. And he got the goal, he plugged away. I've still got concerns. I mean, he got in the right positions and got chances and was really involved and held the ball up quite well, to be honest. But the lack of conviction that he hits the ball as a striker is a massive concern for me, because he had 3 or 4 where you think, go on, just get your knee over the top of it, strike it properly, get your laces on it. And he doesn't seem to have that in his locker. It's always this like golf swing that he sort of swings out at it, leaning back. There's no power or conviction in those strikes, and it'd be nice to see somebody. I think it was Clinton Morrison said that on the commentary on the pundits panel after. He said it would be good to see him speak to Alan Shearer and just get some tips. There's nothing wrong with that kind of thing. It'd be good to see him maybe show that little bit of initiative. But he's working with one of the best in the business in the Premier League at the moment, in Callum Wilson, who, to be honest, then he got a sniff in that game, and then the first opportunity that he gets is cool, calm, and collected when he's running through, just slots it through the keeper's legs. He's a special striker for Newcastle United. And it was a point made to me. I was speaking to my dad last week, last weekend after the game, and he said that he's a season ticket holder at Newcastle, and he said it's such a he described it as a shame for Callum Wilson that there isn't a crowd there, because and I agree with this, because he's the type of player that we would worship as a fan base, absolutely worship somebody like that. If he was scoring goals like he has been in front of 52,000, he would be sort of carried out. He'd be carried out over people's shoulders. He's one of those proper strikers that black and white fans really warm to and really hero worship. So I actually tend to agree with that. My dad doesn't talk much sense. He'd probably be watching this and probably cursing us the next time I see him. But he doesn't talk much sense, but he certainly talks sense on that point. But beyond that, I thought it was a reasonably solid performance. There was no Alan St-Maximin, but did we really miss Alan St-Maximin? I didn't think we did. In terms of the game itself, first half performance was pretty good. Second half performance, you have to say Crystal Palace definitely shaded that. And that's why I think I kind of agree with your smash and grab, because the game felt like it was moving in a certain direction, and all of a sudden Newcastle burst out and scored 2 very quick fire goals. It was an even game. It was one that probably should have ended 0-0, but that's why you pay £20 million for a striker, and that's why you pay £40 million for another. Scored one and created one, and you know what? He's had some criticism in the past, and I never want to see a player in black and white fail, ever. I want to see them all do well. And I want to see Joe Linton really take some confidence from this and start putting in those kind of performances week in, week out. If he can do that, everyone will back him. Everyone will back him all the way. But I'm not going to start jumping around, shouting his name from the rooftops, because I still think that he's severely lacking in his game in a lot of areas. One of them being absolutely no conviction with the ball at his feet in front of goal, because another striker, even a half-decent Premier League finisher, would probably got a couple of goals in that game before he got his first. And like we say, his actual goal was very fortuitous. But you never know. If he can take some confidence from that, he might come back a different player, because he's not a player who's had a lot to build on. He's never really put in a string of performances in his time in black and white where he's now got a base to build on. I think he started to build that up a little bit this season. He's probably been better than he was last season, and hopefully, fingers crossed, he can stay fit and can produce. If he just does that every week, where he runs about, puts loads of effort in, misses the odd chances, I don't think anybody's going to complain too much, because that price tag, ultimately, he's our player now. It doesn't matter what we paid for him in the end. He's our player, and if we just have to try and get the best out of him. But I definitely think in a 2 up front, that's much better. And that's the formation that Newcastle United seem to get results in this season. I've been on here before and I've said I quite like the 3 at the back, because I think it suits the defensive players we've got. Can't get that midfield balance right. But I think when they do actually play 4-4-2, quite a flat 4-4-2, it didn't work against Brighton, was the only one where it failed. But every other game that it's been deployed, Newcastle have done all right, and they've got decent results. So if I was Steve Bruce, I'd be looking at it saying, look, I just need to stick to this 4-4-2, even if people criticise us, because it helps me striker. It means Callum Wilson isn't too isolated. It takes the pressure off a little bit, and gives another focus for defenders, gives him a little bit more time and space. And then I think Newcastle have probably got the players in their ranks to sort of have a quite compact midfield four, which is what we saw at Crystal Palace. And defensively, I think that's probably Newcastle United's best back four. For me, people who watch the show regular know I'm a massive fan of Kieran Clark. I know I'm a really big fan of Federico Fernandez, and for me, they're probably the best 2 defenders in the squad. So for me, I would pick those 2 every day of the week. And then obviously the full-backs, Mankio's a proper right-back, so he has to play. And Jamal Lewis, again, I won't judge him too much on his performances early days at Newcastle, because it's been such a chopping and changing team, personnel, and he's a new lad to the Premier League. Still, he's only played a season. He's only 21. He's young, learning a new place. So I think he's got good signs in him. But no, like I say, we can't get too carried away with decent results, as we shouldn't get too carried away with the bad ones, because it still feels like it's built on sand largely, but the results help, and that's what we need. We need to keep our heads above water this season and just keep our fingers crossed that there'll be a new dawn come the new year.
Okay, and if you want to find out what our regular panel thought of Joe Linton's performance on Friday and whether we think he's turned a corner, it's well worth a watch. Just jump on the playlists, look for fan shows, and search "Has Joe Linton turned a corner?" and NUFC Matters special. Really good show, some good valid points, and I think most people feel he did on that game, and there is a long way to go. I think most of us all agree on that. Today is of course the last day of sponsorship for newworkwear.com. Big thank you to them for sponsoring us for the month. We are looking for a sponsor for December. We've got one for January. If anybody wants to sponsor the show, please drop me an inbox on Twitter, and we will be able to sort it out, or drop us a message at the website newcastlelegends.com. But a big thank you to newworkwear.com, specialists in the supply and branding of clothing for the workplace, and of course one of our long-term sponsors who is remaining with us, qtechshop.co.uk, the makers of pool tables and snooker tables in the northeast, and they've just started their Christmas range, and a wonderful t-shirt with the legend that is Supermac on, which you can buy from us at newcastlelegends.com. T-shirts $14.99 and the mugs, Supermac mugs, at $9.99. Nice little Christmas gift for somebody there. So big thanks to qtechshop.co.uk. As always, plenty questions coming in, Liam. We'll try to get through as many as possible. I am going to put this on Twitter though. Our latest food bank t-shirt, again supplied by qtechshop.co.uk, and that is Head Above the Parapet. There is my head above a parapet. So we're putting that up for the food bank. I'm going to stick that on Twitter. And as always, it's bids tonight onwards until Monday. Monday night's t-shirt, the ladies' night one, did go to someone's already paid the food bank. I believe John was saying £105 we got for that towards the food bank. Unbelievable. I've lost count now. John might be able to let us know exactly how much we've made for the food bank off these t-shirts. But great idea by qtechshop.co.uk. And we're helping the food bank all the time. Now, we are going to have a quick break in proceedings to launch our new campaign. And as I've said, a lot of us have suffered trolls. Liam has, I have, a lot of the regular panellists on the show, people sending abuse, people inboxing us abuse, people spreading malicious rumours and saying things which are not very pleasant. We've all got thick skin, but it was me who decided to make a little bit of a stand against this, and we are in the process of making a documentary which will be coming out on the 15th of December. It'll be free for everybody to watch on YouTube, and it will also be available on Amazon, but you'll be able to watch it. We're hoping to get this message far and wide, but we have launched a little video tonight, and we are going to put it on now. So this is the campaign we're on. Very simple message: think before you tweet. Thanks to all the regular panellists who take part in NUFC Matters each day of the week, and also a big thank you to Meerdad, big supporter of what we're trying to do, getting the message out there, and very nice of him to come on and do that. So big thank you to Meerdad. On to the next question. It's from Tim. Evening lads, interested to hear your thoughts on Jurgen Klopp's exposing the TV rights issue against the welfare of the players. I'm not sure if you watched this interview live, Liam, but it was very, very interesting. The one on BT Sports or Sky, I'm not sure which it was. It might have been Sky, but wow.
Des Kelly, yeah. Look, Steve, before we get on to this, I'm just going to throw this out there. Look, everybody out there, that was actually Meerdad, like on the actual video. So if that, you can't let that one slide under there, Steve, without another mention. On to Jurgen Klopp, I think you know what, I think he's picked the wrong fight with Des Kelly. I thought he picked the wrong fight, starting to have a go at the broadcasters, and it was really quite good to see somebody really stand up to a manager like that. I think he was all at 6s and 7s. I think he realised he kind of picked the wrong fight, but it was a fair point that was being made. It really was that. In terms of the broadcasters, they pay good money for this. And this is something actually agreed by the football clubs. Their chief executives agree this. BT Sport have that particular slot. And they're not all of a sudden just going to pick teams that they know won't get great viewing figures. Why would they put on, let's just pick two out because they're at the bottom of the table, Sheffield United against West Brom. Why would they pick that out when they can have a Liverpool or a Manchester United or somebody like that, or an Arsenal on in that slot, despite the fact they've got European games? I think it was probably wrong to pick that fight with the broadcaster, because ultimately the fight starts at home, and if the teams at the top want that kind of preferential treatment, then they're going to have to. Well, they're just going to have to accept it. They can't have that preferential treatment because they're going to have to play certain games in that slot if the Premier League and if the Premier League clubs agree that that is a viable slot for a broadcast game. I don't really see a problem with it, to be honest. You have a 25-man Premier League squad. That's players over the age of 21. You also have a full squad of players outside of that, which is obviously something we've been looking at this week with Newcastle United and COVID. But you do have a set of players there, probably around 40 players who can probably step into play first team football. And look, these teams build them. We're not talking about patching a squad up at the end of a transfer window. Who's going to get this slot? Who's going to slot in? Who's going to leave? These clubs have got big squads full of stars, full of players who can all play virtually at any other football club in the division. So Liverpool really should be, well, Klopp should probably be complaining to his chief executive, not only about agreeing that BT 1230 was a good slot and obviously taking the money for it, but also maybe not getting him the players that he wanted in the summer to strengthen his squad, because, you know, everybody knows these games are happening. Yes, it's a different season, and I get that. There was a fair point made by Klopp in there that it is an unusual season because of the coronavirus and the lack of pre-season and other mitigating factors. But at the end of the day, you take your money, you pay a price. You know what I mean? If you take the money in one hand, you can't complain about it in the other. And Liverpool really, if they want to complain, and Jurgen Klopp, I think he was probably showing up a bit, because I don't think he realised that the battle probably started at home, and I think he's probably smarting from that a little bit this week, thinking, well, maybe I should have just said that to the chief executive instead of firing at somebody presenting on the TV.
Okay, Toon Crier says, hi Liam, one simple question for tonight. Do you think ASM is dropped, suspended, internally or injured? And what light can you shed on this?
I actually do think he's got an injury. I'm not necessarily sure how much of an injury, but like I said last week, it was my information, as per Craig Hope's fantastic story in the Daily Mail. He broke the news, but there were rumours running about previous to that things weren't happy in the camp. But yeah, it was the case that he was going to be dropped for the game. As any player, I don't think he reacted particularly well to that. But on the same token, that I do think he has got a slight injury. Will that be enough to keep him out? Would that have been enough to keep him out of Aston Villa? I'm not so sure. We'll probably only would have found that out in a few days' time, but we'll never really know that. And I would suspect it didn't sound as if it was an injury so severe that it would keep him out. I don't think he's been reprimanded internally for this. I do think there's just been one of those player unhappy at being dropped, doesn't feel like he should have been dropped, and also has picked up an injury in the training ground. The setup training session for that game. So, look, I think all isn't amazingly happy in terms of Alan St-Maximin. I think careful what I say here, because I'll be getting quote tweeted by NUFC 360. Right. So I don't think that all is happy in the Alan St-Maximin camp. But let's be honest, we're talking about a footballer who didn't come to the Premier League to see Newcastle is his absolute pinnacle. He's a player with a lot of confidence, he's a player with a lot of talent, and he's a player who potentially, if he screws his nut on and really works hard and starts putting in consistent performances like he did in Project Restart, outside of that, then I think he's somebody that can really play at the very, very top of the game in Europe, play at the top of the Premier League. So it's been no surprise to think that he knows he's that good in his own head and isn't the most happy. I mean, who would be happy in this Newcastle United team recently? It's been watching other players play with the football. He's a player who thrives on having the ball at his feet and wants to run at players and take people on. He's had no opportunity to do that. Look, by the same token, would Steve Bruce have been justified in dropping him? I can't complain too much with that. You know, going away from home, you might think that lad's never kicked the ball for 3-4 weeks. I'm just going to take him out. It might have been the best thing to do. I'm not going to vilify Steve Bruce for thinking in that manner, because I think there's arguments on both sides. But I like to think that the manager can get down and sit and talk to his players, and it sounds like they've had a bit of a meeting last week and aired a few grievances and talked through the differences, and that's actually the sign of a good team manager. I'm not just talking about in football. It's just getting those grievances out there, and then when everybody knows how everybody feels, you can then start to work on it and improve things. And I think that was probably the right thing to do for Steve Bruce last week. I haven't all of a sudden become his biggest fan, but I think there are problems that have probably festered for too long with certain players in certain situations, and I think a little bit of a freshening up in that sense hasn't been a bad thing. So, do I think St Maximin has been reprimanded? No. Do I think he had injury? That seems to be the word, that he did have an injury. Do I think he'll keep him out long term? No. So we'll just have to wait and see on that one. But is he a player that is probably going to be constantly linked with a move away? Yeah, because he's got that kind of game changing ability, and we've seen that on occasions. And is he a player that's always going to be happy with a middle to bottom Newcastle United? Well, no, he's probably not, because he's got the ability to play higher. Is he consistent enough to warrant a move to somebody better? I don't think he is at the moment. I think for the 3 or 4 games in 10 that we see a real Alan St Maximin isn't going to be enough if you move to a bigger club. Newcastle United fans can accept that, because that's where we are at the moment. But if you're fighting for titles and you're in the Champions League and you're fighting for European Cups, Premier League titles, FA Cups, then you need players who are going to consistently perform, and Alan St Maximin at the moment doesn't do that.
Jingy asks, any whispers about who the next manager is going to be for Sunderland? I've seen Gus Poyet was heavily linked, but that sounds as if that's gone south now. He's not interested in dropping down to that level, he says. Quite ironic. He's probably one of the managers who helped set them on the way to get to that level.
Yeah, probably is. Yeah, I think he's quite fondly thought of at Sunderland, to be honest. Although I'm not all fair with their particular fan feelings. I never have been. But I think, look, the Cowleys, I think they've been mentioned in dispatches. I think there's been a lot of people put their names forward, but I'm not being impolite here, but literally the goings on at Sunderland to me now are an absolute irrelevance. I literally forget they even exist. They're that far away from where we are. Now, that's not saying it could happen to us. Of course it could happen to anybody, but literally when they're in that division, they've become an absolute irrelevance. The longer and longer they stay out of there, I literally forget they exist, and they'll just be playing some other pub team. Oh, I'm getting a bit carried away. They're just playing some other League One, playing some other League One team that you've barely heard. You've never heard of any of their players, unless you play Football Manager. So yeah, I don't really worry about Sunderland too much. They're not really in my consciousness.
Okay, yeah, I'm half expecting a job offer from William Story. I do know him. I've done a little bit of business with him in the past, and if he gets the club, if he gets his hands on the club, he'd probably appoint me as director of football. So, yeah, we'll see what happens over the next few weeks on that. It's going to be interesting to say the least. I am just going to share in the chat Spenny's GoFundMe page. Spenny is walking 100k in a week. He's trying to raise a £300 target. But yeah, he's raising funds for 3 schools that he represents as a governor. That real families, need the money. So it's kids who've got special needs and disabilities. And if anybody can donate anything to that, I've shared the GoFundMe page in the chat. So got 555 people watching at this moment in time. So if you can help Stephen raise the money that he needs by doing 100k in a week, then please drop your money into that link. Liam, is the West Bromwich Albion match in doubt on the 12th of December?
I don't think so, not at the moment. We'll have to see how things pan out. There's no certainty. Like I said, we're in uncharted waters on this one. But I'm led to believe it's around 10 days that the self-isolation period in this regard with the protocols in the Premier League. So that'll take up to less than that. That's bearing in mind if somebody's sort of tested positive today or has to self-isolate today, then they'll probably be fine for that. We've got to also remember it's not the same as if me or you got it in the workplace. It is very different. These guys are tested regularly, tested every couple of days, numerous times. So that rigorous testing will obviously continue, and I think there'll be people probably giving negative tests next week who may well have been positive this week. I think that should all be fine, unless there's a big if here, and that's what I'm saying. We don't really know the situation fully. But all of a sudden, if this outbreak continues and people continue testing positive up to the weekend and through that, then we could have problems with West Brom. But for the moment, it looks like West Brom should be fine.
Okay, plenty of people talking a little bit about the takeover and about the Middle East and stuff. We've covered that slightly earlier on the show, so if you're all late, you'll just need to watch the first 15 minutes. Mike Stewart asking, do you think Joe Linton's turned a corner? And I think you just said, well, he's not turned a corner, has he? But he has played slightly better in recent games.
Yeah, I think that's the key thing. I think, again, don't put too much pressure on the bloke himself. Look, he had a decent game, and he's had a couple of okay games this season. He's been much improved on what he was last season, but was setting the bar very, very low with his performances last season. He looks to me like a confidence player. He looks to me like not really an out-and-out centre-forward, certainly not a finisher. So as long as we take that and we accept him for what he is, then I would say his performances are improving. We could say if you're judging in that sense, he has maybe turned a corner, but I wouldn't want to put that pressure on him yet. Because he's been very, very underwhelming for the money that was paid over the 18 months or so, or 2 years that he's been at Newcastle United. And I would say that he's still got a lot of paying back to do. We're going to have to see a lot better performances if he's to remain at this football club beyond probably next season, I would say. Because he's got this as his second season. You can always write the first one off with a new lad, doesn't speak the language. He's never played this style of football, South American, take a little bit of time. I think this season we're starting to see a little bit better, but if this is as good as he gets, then there will be serious question marks over whether he stays as a striker at Newcastle United.
Daniel Woodward's talking about something away from Newcastle, of course, but something that was quite serious over the weekend was that head clash between Jimenez and Luiz. And Luiz continued to play, which surprised me. I do remember a game at Newcastle, might have been last season or maybe the season before that, when two players, Newcastle players, actually collided heads and both had to go off and both missed the next game with concussion. So, to see Luiz stay on with blood seeping through the bandage was surprising. The fact that he was allowed then to drive his car home, it was just bizarre. But yeah, what did he make of all that?
Look, Steve, I think it's something that in sport in general has probably come to the fore quite a lot in the last few days, because we've seen a heavyweight fight at the weekend between Daniel Dubois and he got an eye injury. Joe Joyce was the other fighter. He got an eye injury, fractured an eye socket, and suddenly people say he's a quitter. Now, boxing fighters are a different breed to most. They are a different breed, but realistically, you've got to remember this is people's health. It's not just that they are people at the end of the day. And if that lad thinks he might lose his eyesight by continuing to fight, I think anybody would quit. And it's not quitting, is it? It's such a short word that means it's got really a negative connotation to it. But most people would quit. And I say the same about this. We hark back to days of Terry Butcher with blood pouring down his top, and Alan Shearer being strapped up and wanting to play on. That's the manly thing to do, the right thing to do. Look, let's be honest about this. It's a game of football. It's a prize fight. It's boxing for money. That's what it is. These lads aren't going in their life or death, despite what they might say. And these lads who run out on a football pitch don't want to be permanently disfigured or permanently damaged for the rest of their lives. I think there's got to be an element of common sense here. If somebody does take a significant knock on the head and there is bleeding like there is David Luiz, he just needs to come off, despite what he may say, and even sometimes in spite of what the doctor's advice may well be. There needs to be somebody independent viewing this and saying, right, he needs to come off now. The signs there that something's not right. He's got a bleed in his head, take him off. Again, by the same token, with these fighters, why would they want to be, he might never see again if he continues to fight and take punches in that eye. I don't blame anybody for quitting in a situation like that. For the same token, I wouldn't blame anybody for walking off the pitch if they had a massive head trauma. Because it's not like, for example, if you were in a car crash and you got up and walked away, you would suddenly walk into your workplace and sit down at your laptop or start stacking shelves or whatever you may do as your job. You know what I mean? You'd go to the hospital straight away because you'd be looked at and assessed and stitched up or whatever it may be. And I think that should be something, that common sense approach should maybe be applied a little bit more in football. And we need to get away from this macho idea that, oh, well, he's soft if he does that. No, he's not. It's just common sense. Like I say, if you damage yourself in any other walk of life, if you weren't playing sport, you wouldn't carry on. And it's not soft to come off or quit, as some people might call it. So I do feel quite strongly about this, in a sense, because, and I'm keep harking back to boxing. Obviously, you're a massive boxing fan, Steve, promoter and the like. And I think it's something that's used too much. I think there's a stigma of the idea that people in a macho game where fighting, they're different breed, different type of people, but at the end of the day, that they are just people. And if you scratch the surface, they've still got families. They still want to go home to see their kids and their wife, and they still want to, enjoy the fruits of their labour. They're fighting for money. They want to go home and be able to drive their car, and he doesn't want to have to take his driving lessons again because he can't see out of one eye. You know what I mean? It's this macho sporting idea, this bubble needs to be broken, really. And I think we've seen a little bit of that in the last few days, and there does seem to be a changing of the waves. I think people are moving towards that and being a bit more, you know what? I think we need to look after these people's health. It's only an entertainment game, no matter what sport it is. It's just for our entertainment. And if that's going to, surely somebody putting all their efforts in and damaging themselves permanently is not entertainment at the end of the day, is it?
Yeah, exactly, mate. Exactly. Liam says if you could interview, Andrew says, Liam, if you could interview anyone, who would it be? Doesn't have to be a footballer.
Can I have 5 minutes to think about that? Because it's quite a good question.
Yeah, no problem. No problem.
I'll have a think, mate.
Jonathan asks you another one. Since Steve Bruce has been appointed Newcastle United manager, which players do you think have improved under his stewardship?
I'll throw that back at you. Do you think any have improved? I find it really difficult to think that any have. I think we've seen regressions with a number. I think we're seeing the likes of Sean Longstaff become stale and not improve as he was under Rafa Benitez. I think we've seen Jamal Lascelles, although limited in certain departments, was able to improve under Rafa Benitez and hasn't done that under Steve Bruce. I'm really racking my brains here to think, has there been anybody that I think Steve Bruce has a direct impact on and improved? No, I genuinely don't. And I'm not necessarily saying that's a massive dig at Steve Bruce, although it may seem one. But I'm really struggling to think of any single player in that squad who I can now say is a better player for having Steve Bruce as a manager for 18 months.
A lot of people asking what you thought about Grealish's dive at the weekend.
I didn't see it. I've not seen it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I would just say 9.9, definitely. That's what it was. Definitely a dive. He's very good at that. Julie Baker saying, is that Mrs. Wraith making a cuppa? Yeah, this microphone picks up a lot, by the way. It does pick up a lot. And I keep trying to mute it, but then I'm worried in case I leave it on mute. But this is what happens when you're running everything yourself and dealing with Virgin as well. A lot of people saying Virgin. Yeah, I'm fully aware. I do often click on the YouTube look and I can see how bad it looks. It's absolutely ridiculous. It sounds great because I've invested a mic, but there's absolutely nothing I can do about the picture, and I am going to have to ring up Virgin and see what they can do, because there's clearly an issue with it. But as long as it doesn't blur Liam, that's the main thing. He's the main guest on a Tuesday night.
Well, I haven't mentioned this for weeks, but I did notice that the lighting comments have gone. All that complaints about the lighting.
Yeah, no, you've done well, mate. You've done well. You've got it all. You've got it all sorted. I hope you're still thinking about that Andrew Malloy question about. I see you've got a halo. Well done, mate. Yeah, I think from your perspective, just keep that question in mind, and we can do that. We can do that towards the end. Paul Gibson says the Magnificent Seven all have COVID. Lascelles, Hendrick, Baldy 1, Longstaff, Paul Plummet, Joe Clinton and the Donkey. Get in, might get a few results now. I mean, I don't know who's got COVID, but I wouldn't wish it on anybody. So, fingers crossed that they all recover and get back to doing what they get paid for. Jason Carter says the iconic pictures of a patched up Terry Butcher and Alan Shearer spring to mind. They were a different breed too, though, in my opinion. Rohan says, any word of any of our players getting new contracts? Quite a few of our players' contracts run out at the end of the season. We did do a special on this a couple of weeks ago with the girls and the lads. Any updates on that, or is it a little bit early yet?
There's a lot really being put on hold to a large extent. There was a lot of action in the summer, but there's a lot of players, particularly in certain positions, that these contracts do need to be addressed. The one that particularly concerns me is the central defence, I mentioned them earlier. Federico Fernandez is out in the summer. Kieran Clark, for me, they're the two best central defenders Newcastle United have. Fabian Shaw, so that's three of Newcastle United's four central defenders. All their contracts come at the end of the season. There's others like Jacob Murphy, others around the field. And I think it's something that Newcastle United do need to address, but will they address it immediately? I'm not so sure, because there is a lot of stuff and there's a lot of focus being pushed towards other things. Realistically, let's just say if this takeover does go ahead before the end of the season, and if it looks like it's going to go ahead, then I think we will see movement on that front. And I think we'll see strings pulled from outside of the current ownership model as to who will get them and who won't. What will happen in coaching terms with the manager and others. There'll be a lot of things done, but I think with there being so many balls up in the air at the moment, it's difficult to know which one's going to fall next. And I think we're at that kind of limbo stage at the moment, a little bit of a grey area, whereby the ownership is still a big question mark. We don't know whether we're going to have new owners come the new year, or it may take longer. We may not have new owners till sort of maybe the summer, potentially. I mean, it could potentially drag on that long. There is so much at play here, but. And potentially, there's obviously the other option that we might not have any change of ownership, but I think Mike Ashley will play this out as long as he possibly can with the current manager and with the current crop of players. And I don't think you particularly want to spend a lot of money on improved contracts and other areas, which some of these lads who I'm talking about will come to the end of their contracts. Federico Fernandez, in and around the 30 barrier, Kieran Clark in and around the same. Got to remember, as footballers, it's a short life, and that's kind of your last big contract is around that age. So I think those players will probably want slight improvements, or if not, they'll want some kind of security. They'll probably want 3 to 4 years. And I'm not sure those are the type of deals that Mike Ashley, at this point, having really splashed it in the summer, in terms of what we didn't expect him to. I don't think he's going to be so willing to do that moving forward. So. I think it's something that does need addressed. Do I think it will be addressed in the short term? I don't think that is the case, no.
Okay, James says, Liam, will Ashley put pressure on DeMarco to get the deal done before the new year, or risk relegation and no deal?
Look, I don't think this team will get relegated, because there's no sort of, I don't know. They seem to be able to just scrape a result from nowhere within runs. I was talking last week saying it's difficult after that last couple of performances. It was difficult to see how they'd pick up their next point, and then they go and win away from home in a relatively solid performance. Even if they'd taken a point, it would have been a good result. So I think this team will do that consistently this season. They will flatter to deceive mostly, but they will pick up the odd result here and there, and that'll be enough. And particularly this year, where at this stage, it looks like it's probably going to take less points to steal because of the poor nature of the teams at the bottom. We said that last year, and it was a little bit less, but not massively. I mean, there will be improvements there. I think this team will stay up, so I don't think that's necessarily going to be a problem. I think we'll be all right. And I think with regards to pressure on DeMarco, which was the question, look, these things will take as long as they take. And I don't think there's any pressure will come on DeMarco from Mike Ashley. Of course, Mike Ashley wants this deal done, but Nick DeMarco is effectively the best in the business at what he does. He's working alongside Shahid Fatima as well. We obviously know there's anti-competition cases going on left, right, and centre as well. So we'll just have to wait and see. I think I mentioned it before, and I'm going to change from joining the dots here. I'm going to say something again. There is so many balls in the air. It's difficult to know when the next one will drop. It really is, because it could be one ball that drops and it'll break the whole thing and we'll have a takeover. It could be another ball drops that breaks the whole thing in the opposite way and it's done and we'll never see it again. So again, in this situation, there are so many variables that could change it in a number of different directions. But there does seem to still be a real confidence that this is something that can be done. It can be done relatively quickly via a number of different routes. And while people that I'm speaking to who close to dealings around the takeover retain that confidence, then I'm confident with them, and I'll remain hopeful that we can have a new dawn at some point this season.
Okay, Martin says, do you think ASM and Miggy have a future under Bruce? Not sure if Bruce really fancies them.
He doesn't. I just don't think he's really warm to Miguel Almiron. I think he's taken him a little bit for granted, to be honest. Look, I don't think he's a world beater. Far from it, but I think he's a decent Premier League player, and I think he could be used a lot better. And I think the player knows that himself. St. Maximin is a low unto himself, and I don't mind that. I don't mind having Mavericks in a team. I was a massive fan of Laurent Robert. I was speaking on the phone to Steve Hasty at the weekend, and we're sort of lamenting Laurent Robert and how fantastic he was. And there seems to have been like a revision of history with regards Robert, that all of a sudden everybody thinks he was the best thing since sliced bread when they look back on his goals and they see his YouTube highlights. It wasn't like that. If you were at St. James's Park when he was there, he used to get a lot of criticism. It wasn't always the sort of person that people look back on now. But I don't mind that. I've always been a fan of Mavericks. Patton Ben Arfa's the other one in my time that really sort of got me really excited to go to games. And I don't mind that. Alan St. Maximin's a bit like that. You're never going to get consistent performances from him. But like I say, if he was performing consistently at the level we know he can, he would not be anywhere near Newcastle United. He would never have been close to coming here in the first place. So do I think Bruce gets the best out of him? No, I think some of the poor performances recently can probably be put down to that formation and that trial of him as in a bit of a free role in a 10. Didn't work. Has to play on the left. And if you're going to play on the left, sometimes you're going to have to accept he's not maybe going to cover the left back defensively, and he's maybe going to drift in and out of games. But he is what he is, and I would love to. I just hope that players like that are still on the books at Newcastle United come the end of next summer, because I think they're the type of players that if Newcastle are to progress, they should really be hanging on to, and they should be building around those, not letting those type of players go.
Okay, Kenneth Stark believes that some of these pundits are extracting the urine by saying that Steve Bruce is doing a good job. Would you agree?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I really do. I think there's a real sort of friend camp in the pundits at the moment. They all just put their arm around each other and sort of give each other a lot of positivity when it is barely warranted. And I was speaking to the guys at my newspaper who work at the Sunderland Echo, and I was speaking about Sunderland actually this morning in a conference call, and I seen there was some people out there who suggested it was the wrong decision for Sunderland to sack their manager and criticising the fans for the criticism. And I think Newcastle United are so used to that, and I was saying that to those guys this morning that it's really painful to listen to. That ultimately I think fans do know best, because fans are the type who watch. Look, we all don't. We all get things wrong, but I think fans watch these players all the time. They watch the team all the time. They watch the manager's substitutions. They watch his changes in formation. They watch every word that he says post-match, pre-match. And I think they are a good judge of whether a manager is good or bad. And I think the general consensus at Sunderland was that Phil Parkinson, despite the position that they find themselves in, was dreadful. I think Newcastle United fans are very similar on Bruce. And we just get told constantly that Newcastle United fans have got it wrong. They should be grateful for the position that Newcastle United find themselves in. Newcastle United should not be grateful for the position they find themselves in. Nobody should be grateful for the position they find themselves in. Everybody should be aspiring to be the best version of themselves they can be. And that goes for football clubs too. And I think Newcastle United fans' frustrations mainly come from that they've known for a long time now that Newcastle United do not want to be the best version of themselves. They want to limit themselves, and Steve Bruce's appointment was really symptomatic of that approach.
Tom Dixon says, any news on Dubravka?
No, there hasn't been. Obviously, the last sort of bit of news we had was that he would potentially be back in December. We're now into the start of December, so I think we probably would have found out a little bit more on Thursday from Steve Bruce, but we'll probably have to wait a little bit longer for that kind of news to come out, unless somebody does some digging and finds out a little bit more about Dubravka's situation.
Okay, Ron Bennett, thank you very much for that, mate. I'm not a technophobe, but I'm always happy to take advice. Google how to change upload channel on Virgin Media. It will resolve your problem. Thanks, Ron. Good stuff. Danny Murphy, Robbie Savage, Chris Sutton, just repeating the same garbage all the time. I will say, Martin, though, fair play to Danny Murphy, who exchanged a DM Twitter message with a Newcastle fan who held him accountable for his comments about Bruce, explaining in a civilised manner exactly why he felt Danny Murphy backing Bruce was wrong, and he said fair play. He admitted, he doesn't watch Newcastle a great deal, and he would look at things in a different light. Maybe he's moving forward. So fair play to Danny Murphy for actually responding about that. Drawing Arsenal, if this tier system's still in place, can see them getting fans in the game. But Arsenal in the FA Cup third round away. Oh my God! I mean, just what we didn't need really. And Arsenal, although they're not playing well, always a difficult game, especially down at their place.
Yeah, it's going to be a difficult one. Like I say, it probably won't be Arsenal's absolute best team. I mean, I'm not sure they really know what their best team is at the moment. They're struggling. They're in and around the same sort of position as Newcastle United in the Premier League this season. But really, it will be a challenging game. And you would expect a club like Arsenal, even if they do make changes, to probably have enough to see off Newcastle United in that third round. I mean, it brings an end to a quite interesting run of cup draws for Steve Bruce. It's been relatively, I mean, you could call it is the luck of the draw effectively, but they've had good draws both in the League Cup and in the FA Cup. Having got the quarterfinal last season, though, in the quarterfinal of the League Cup, having played virtually nobody to get to that point. So, we're due a tough draw. And as tough as draws go, it probably isn't the worst one you could have got out of the hat, but it's probably also one you would really have wanted to avoid.
Yeah, definitely from our perspective, one that we could have done with avoiding. Well done to Marine, though, who play in the same division as Dunstan, who got Tottenham Hotspur. What a draw that is, by the way.
Yeah, incredible. Do you know what? We'll go back to that question then. So if there's anybody that I would really, really like to interview, like a one-on-one sit down and chat with, it would be somebody like Jose Mourinho. When you mentioned Tottenham Hotspur, because I can imagine I'd love to hear his things he couldn't say on camera about his time at Barcelona, how he got into the game and his pressures at Manchester United, he's winning European trophies at other clubs. Somebody like that would really excite me, sitting really delving into the depths of somebody like that, because he's such an interesting character in terms of the way he deals with people. It's almost like he has like a cult following, and I think he's just a really fantastic manager. And he's come again in English football. Everybody said he was finished before he took the Tottenham job, and I think he's proven a few people wrong. And I don't mind seeing that. And he's got a real soft spot for Newcastle United, so he'd always have carry favour in my books.
Okay, good stuff. What's the odds, Liam? You'll be on this show in 6 months, and people will be asking if the takeover's still going through. Oh my God, I hope not.
Look, we didn't think we'd be here. We didn't think we'd be this far down the line where we are. So, is it a possibility? Yeah, it definitely is. We could easily find myself here in 6 months. Do I think we'll be here in a year? No. But 6 months, what would that take me to? May? Yeah, I think we could easily be in that position, depending on the way things go. But I would suspect that things will probably move on over the Christmas period into January, and I think we'll know a little bit more by then. I said that a few weeks about November, and we did know a little bit more in November, but we're still not probably as far on as I thought we would be by now. So we'll see. Hopefully we're not. Hopefully we're on here, and I'm sitting here in 6 months' time, and we're all talking about how fantastic when new owners are, and hopefully we're complaining about the players. We're not, why aren't we paying 80 million instead of 70 million for him and all that kind of thing. Fingers crossed. We're talking about really positive change in Newcastle, because that's ultimately all what you guys out there want. And it's what Steve wants. It's what I want. And it's why everybody's been, really championing that cause, because there is a realisation that this is an absolute game changer for Newcastle United if that kind of money comes into the football club. Definitely.
Brian, I'll finish on your question. The owners, new owners, if it is PIF, there's certainly plans afoot for a lot of investment, mate. So the answer to your question about that is yes, in due course. But the most important thing, I think, for new owners would be to come in, get a good manager in, coach, and invest heavily in the playing squad and improve the academy and tidy the ground up, because it's an absolute clip at this moment. everyone, thanks very much for your kind comments. Kenneth, thanks lads, great show, big thumbs up. B Taylor, fantastic show, thanks for your time, great stuff. Thanks very much for all your positive comments. If you're a new visitor, please subscribe to the channel, costs you nothing. Click subscribe. You'll get notifications when the shows start. If you want to donate something, you just need to hit the join button, and you can make a little donation to the channel. That would be great. We are looking for a sponsor for December, so if there's any small businesses out there, it's not a king's ransom. All we need is the money to pay for the StreamYard. Otherwise, I pay for it, and got no problems doing that. But if anybody wants to sponsor it, it's great, great advertisement for your show for a full month in December. We have got January sorted though. Liam, just tell people where people can find you and your wonderful journalistic work.
Cheers. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this slot. I always push it to say, oh, go to the Shields Gazette, look at my work. I've got a mate, right? He's one of my best mates in the business. He's called Jordan Cronin, and he's desperate for followers out there. So anybody, part of the NUFC Matters community, if you can get on there, give Jordan a follow. He's a Newcastle United fan, works for the Shields Gazette, works for the Sunday Network, Hartlepool Mail. He's a really good lad. He always helps on our podcast. Every week when we do the our little podcast that we do on a Wednesday, Mouth of the Time. So if you guys can give him a follow, that would absolutely make his day.
Okay, that's Jordan Cronin. What's his at name then?
Oh, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I probably should have searched that beforehand, but search Jordan Cronin. He's part of the Shields Gazette.
Okay, let's have a look for him, and we'll get him a few followers. Good luck to him. And William, just subscribe. Thanks. Great to have new people visit the show. I know it. It's people stumble across it by accident, etc. We're still growing the channel. Thanks very much for everybody who has stuck with us through thick and thin through the pandemic, and we will continue to do 7 shows a week for as long as I can. And a lot of people always ask, can we do a longer show? Look, we might up it to 90 minutes in the new year. Maybe it's in January. We've got to get through December, and we've both got young families. Me and Liam, so we've got to spend time with the young ones over December, but maybe in January we will. And Liam and I have been talking about a couple of specials as well, which I think we're looking at doing at some point. We'll pre-record them, and that means that you'll still have shows to watch over Christmas when we have a little bit of time off. But as I said, always great to speak to you, Liam. Great to have you on, mate. And I'm going to play out with the, as I say, the Think Before You Tweet video, which we broadcast a little bit earlier. It's a campaign that we've just started. Obviously, from our perspective, we do want everyone who's on Twitter to think before you tweet. If you're on Facebook as well, I mean, it seems to happen less on there, but just on social media, just be a little bit more responsible and, think about what you're putting out there, because people do have feelings. Everybody's got feelings, and it does affect people when you put abuse out there about them. But Liam, speak to you next Tuesday, mate. Have a good week. Take care.
Same to you, mate.